Have tea with me. Welcome back to Tea Talk Caregiver 101. Have tea with me. I'm drinking my favorite premium green tea, which is very good. I love this tea. All right, let's get to today's topic, which is dealing with challenging behaviors. Let's talk about what is a behavior. ABA states that a behavior is anything a person say or do, which was kind of hard, to wrap my mind about this, because I only think of when I think about a behavior, I think about like the negative behaviors. I don't think about being polite. I really wasn't thinking about the good things that people could do is considered a behavior as well. And challenging behaviors is hard to deal with, whether it's at home, in a home setting, in a day program, in a school setting, in a daycare. Challenging behaviors basically, can be very challenging. I'll just use the challenging word because it is, what it says it is, that is challenging. And as caregivers, as teachers, as being staff, we have to really learn how to deal with, dealing with challenging behaviors. Could be verbal aggression, physical aggression. It could be loafing. It could be outbursts. It could be throwing items. It could be a whole bunch of different behaviors, but at the end of the day, it's still considered as challenging. So let's get to the steps. The first step I want to talk about is the antecedent. An antecedent and what happens before the behavior occurs. So if mom goes in Johnny's room and say, Johnny, clean up your room, and walk out, and Johnny throwing items, drawing on the wall, if he's stumping, he on the ground screaming, that's the antecedent, what happens before the behavior occurs. So we really have to be mindful of getting a log, writing it down, like, okay, when this behavior occurred, this is what happened before the behavior. Or another example, I'm in a store and I'm walking down the candy aisle, and the child picks up, points at the candy, and mom say, you can't have the candy, and the child has a tantrum. So we know that the antecedent is that the adult, the caregiver, whoever made that statement, you cannot have candy, and the individual or the person threw themselves on the ground. So now let's talk about the consequence. The consequence is your response to the behavior. So the first example I did with mom going into Johnny, telling Johnny to clean up his room. He throws everything around. And then my response is I say, you know what, Johnny, don't worry about it. Or my response would be, well, I'm going to clean it up. So that is the consequence. That is the response to the behavior. And what happens is, Johnny know every time he throw things, have the tantrum in his room, you're going to go in this room, you're going to clean it up or give him a way out. Let's talk about, the consequence of the store scenario when she in the store, mom or the caregiver said, today you cannot have candy, or just say no. She throws herself to the ground, and I, as a caregiver, give her the candy anyway. So then she learns that every time I have a tantrum in the store or throw myself on the ground, I am going to get the candy. So it's more likely for that behavior to occur. So that's one of the important is you have to identify the antecedent and identify the consequence Number two is identify the function of the behavior. In the first example I did with Johnny not wanting to clean up his room, he wanted to escape from cleaning up his room. In the second example with the candy scenario in the grocery store, she wanted the candy, so she wanted tangible. So when you're dealing with the function of behaviors, you have to figure out what the function of the behavior is, and the function of behaviors are escape, avoid, attention seeking, something tangible, want an activity, or sensory stimulation. So you got to figure out what type of behavior they're displaying, determine the function. Then after you identify, the antecedent, then you determine what type of function is. So let's go over functioning. Escape is, not wanting to clean up the room, not wanting to do homework. Avoiding doing homework. Attention seeking, I just want attention, good or bad. Tangible, candy, gum, money, suckers, whatever it is, stickers. Activity, I want to go bowling, I want to go somewhere, I want to do something no matter what the activity is. Or sensory stimulation, I like if I have a behavior hit my head, I like the way it feels. So when I hit my head, it's just something internally that what makes me like displaying these behaviors. So as the caregiver, or just, a person or a family member, you have to determine what the function is to be able to assess it. And then number three, we're going to implement a strategy. Let's say we know the first illustration I did was Johnny not cleaning up his room, or don't want to clean up his room. And usually I provide a way for him to escape. That means I tell him never mind, or I go and clean it up himself. I have to get to the point as a caregiver, as a staff member, to say, well, you know what, Johnny, I hear you screaming and having a tantrum, but still clean up your room. That means when he does those behaviors, I'm still going to hold him accountable for cleaning up his room. And let's go with the next example I did with the candy in the store. So my strategy would be, I know we're going to go down the candy aisle. I know she's going to point to the candy. But when she say, I'm going to say, today we can't have candy today. She's going to get mad. She's going to have tantrum, and I'm going to allow her to have that tantrum. I'm just going to ensure she's safe, that she doesn't bump her head. So your strategy, what happens is when you implement a strategy, the behavior is going to escalate, and they're going to do other behaviors that have gotten them the candy or allowed Johnny to escape for cleaning up his room. And as a caregiver and family member, it's stressful. They could go into behavior for hours. We know the behavior is going to escalate. For first of all, it could be just like throwing items, throwing himself on the floor. It could be throwing his TV. It could be tearing up his room. It could be cutting up his sheets. His behavior is going to get worse before it gets better. And that's why the family or caregivers do not want to implement a strategy. And it's one of the hardest things. It's very stressful. It's time consuming. I worked in a group home where a person screamed for 12 hours straight. 12 hours. And what management did was we took shifts. And also we was there for support with staff, because we knew we couldn't give in to the behavior long we just made sure the person was safe for harm, they was safe, staff was safe and they wasn't causing harm to themselves or to others. That's one of the things when implement a strategy. And just like I was saying in the store scenario, when she throw herself onto ground, because you can't expect it, it's going to happen. She could throw herself for the ground. It could go to throwing stuff in the store. It could go to hitting you in the store. Just know the behaviors will get worse before it gets better, and you should expect it. And that is one of the hardest things, And my next step, my fourth step in this is contact resources. You could contact counseling. You could contact ABA therapy. You could call around to some companies to see if you could get some help with assisting with these behaviors. You could contact juvenile court. You could contact respite that you need a break. You could call, you could contact GCAL, Mobile Crisis Unit, because, the thing of it is we have to stick to the strategy, and that is one of the hardest things to do when you dealing with challenging behaviors. And it's just easier to give up to clean up Johnny room for him. It could be at home or in a group home, and it's just easier to give Sally the sucker in the store. It's just easier to give them the candy. It's just so much easier to give in what they want. But when you start bargaining, that means you're going to be bargaining for the rest of the time in services. You're going to be bargaining forever, and you do not want to get in a position that you're bargaining, because guess what? The bargaining would never stop, and it's going to get enhanced. So it's just better to implement a strategy to assist with dealing with the challenging behaviors. And if it's far in the group home, have staff on call, change staff out, give staff a break at home, call your other support family members for a break, let them go over a house for time that you could walk away, or for caregivers or staff, go outside and take a walk while another staff step in, because we have to stick to the strategy. We have to stick to the plan, and that is the only way that challenging behavior will become extinct, or they will be increased. I would just encourage you to never give up. I will encourage you to just reach out to your resources in the area. For group home members, I would encourage you, to reach out to the management team. If the management team is not really that helpful, reach out to the behavior specialist in your company that will be able to assist with the behaviors. And also write it down. Make sure as behaviors occur that you document it. In the field of IDD world, what we say. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. So that's some of the things, I would like to encourage you. And I would say, as a person who experienced working with challenging behaviors, that you can always do your best and do the best that you can. I just want to say, continue to give me a thumbs up. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for tuning in to Tea Talk Caregiver 101. Thank you and enjoy.